Thank you everyone for joining today for Operationalizing Threat Intelligence for the Enterprise with Access IT and CrowdStrike. Josh, if you just want to go to the next slide real quick. Thank you. So my name is Rosemary Christian. I'm the Manager of Client Engagement for Access IT Group. And our main presenter today is Josh Burgess. He's a Strategic Threat Intel Advisor at CrowdStrike. And we'll tell you a little bit about Access IT before we get started. So for those of you who don't know who we are, Access IT Group is a premier integrator of cybersecurity products and services. So I won't read all the bullet points, but just to give you a synopsis, Access IT Group's professional services organization is comprised of 3 practice areas: cloud services, risk management services, and technical services that work together to secure our customers' environments and help protect them in the new wave of cyber attacks. Our professional services practices are focused on helping customers evaluate their current cybersecurity posture through consulting and specialized security services. We are prepared to support our clients with technical resources and other advisory services to mitigate and respond to any cyber attack. So thank you to the CrowdStrike team for joining us today. And with us, as I mentioned, from CrowdStrike, we have Josh Burgess, John Severand, and Alex Kolendzik. I'm sorry, I did not practice that beforehand, but thank you to the CrowdStrike team for joining us. And just to give you a little bit more about Josh, since he'll be our main presenter, he's an experienced intelligence officer with a demonstrated history of working in public and private cybersecurity industries, more than a decade working in intelligence, incident response, computer forensics, cyber engineering, and information assurance. So thanks so much everyone for joining, and I'll pass it over to you, Josh.
Awesome, cool. Thanks everybody for joining me this afternoon or this morning, as it were. Well, things are blending together. Appreciate it. So I'm going to talk about some of the latest cyber threats, but getting more into actioning and operationalizing the intel. Not just, hey, here's a whole bunch of stuff, good luck, but actually doing something with that data. That being said, I could talk about this stuff until I'm blue in the face all day long. This is my jam. This is my stuff that I love. But if you don't really take anything away from it, it's kind of a waste of time. So I want to make sure you guys get something taken away from it. So questions, comments, concerns, please throw that in the chat, and I will do my best at the end to address every one of them. I'm not talented enough to do it in line, but if you throw it in there now, I promise you I will try to get every single one of them in the end. So with that being said, a little bit about me just for a second. I lead the technical side as Chief Threat Advisor team at CrowdStrike. What does that mean? It sounds like an arbitrary long title, but basically that means I'm the one who helps people action intelligence. My job is not to say, hey, here's a bunch of threats, some IOCs, some feeds, some data, good luck, hopefully you'll be okay. Actually building that into your program. Not just turning IOCs on and putting in your SIM, because that's not too terribly difficult, but building intelligence into an entire InfoSec lifecycle, an entire business lifecycle. Because when you can do that, you can move away from being reactive. You can actually be predictive. You can get into the holy grail of cyber intelligence, of predicting threats before they materialize in your organization. When you do that, you're better for it. You're able to secure your enterprise more effectively. And that's really what I kind of focus in on, is getting on the predictive side. Because I've worked at a lot of organizations. Been at CrowdStrike about 3 years. I've talked to a lot of different companies. I worked at a major credit card processor. You probably have the card in your wallet for about 4 years. I'm part of the intelligence community. I've learned along the way that it's not a money thing. You can absolutely, if this is your jam, this is what you want to do, you can back a dump truck full of cash into an InfoSec program and hope for the best, but it's not going to make you any better. It's not going to hurt you in a lot of cases, but it won't make you any better. The goal is to take the data that's out there, figure out where you have your data, where your gaps are, and how you address those gaps, and how you close those, patch those walls. It helps keep the bad guys out. So what are we going to talk about today? We're talking about why threat intelligence matters. Why is it a thing? We all have read those articles from, Wired or, SC Magazine or whatever else. I'm going to get into why it matters. And then I'm going to get into 2 pieces: the cognitive realm, the thinking realm, what goes on in your head, what the understanding of the problem is, and then the actioning realm. And then finally, I'll get into operationalizing the entire intelligence lifecycle. So why does intelligence matter? Well, the number's going up. We have a team at CrowdStrike called Overwatch. Our Overwatch team takes the events that we bring in from endpoints and tries to find that slightly duller needle in the needle factory. We bring in about 4 trillion events per week. We get more events in a week from our endpoints than Twitter and Facebook do in a year combined. So it's a lot of data. We comb through that data, try to find the bad stuff, the malicious stuff. And as you can see from this, from the slide, the number is going up. One of the biggest reasons the number is going up, especially when it comes to e-crime, nation state's going up because of COVID and everything else, and the world's kind of a scary place right now. But from an e-crime perspective, the reason it's going up is e-crime is effective. E-crime is making money. They're not going to stop. Why would you stop when you make money? The other part that you have to account when it comes to this is the culture that breeds it. Now, when it comes to e-crime, not every e-crime actor, not every bad actor is in Russia. That's just not true. CrowdStrike Perspective, we track American e-crime actors, British e-crime actors, Canadian, Brazil's coming up into the game pretty fast, but most of them are in Eastern Europe or in Russia. And the reason why that exists, the reason why that's a thing, is because of the culture that breeds it. There is only one rule that you can never break if you want to be an e-crime actor in Russia. And the golden rule is never target a Russian in Russia or Eastern European in Eastern Europe. As long as you don't do that, you're bulletproof. There's no consequences. Great piece of example for that was an indictment that was put out for Maxim Kubitz and Igor Togodyshev, basically the two leaders of the Dridex malware gang. They've been in the game since about 2009 timeframe. So when you look at what they've done and you look at the indictment the FBI filed against them, and they're over in Russia, there's a lot of really cool data points in there. One of the data points when you start really looking through doing some research is there's actually a picture of Maxim Kubitz downtown in the streets of Moscow, standing next to a police officer, chatting it up with a police officer next to his car. What kind of car does he drive? Well, he's a successful e-crime actor, so he drives a brand new Lamborghini Huracan, highly modified version of that car. The best part though is, again, he's talking to a police officer downtown the streets of Moscow with his Lamborghini, a $250,000+ car, with a license plate that says Vor, or thief in Russian. That's how bulletproof you are. You could drive a Lambo in the streets of Moscow, talk to cops, license plate that says thief on it, not have to worry about consequences. The problem is not going away anytime soon. It's going to continue being a problem. And what are we doing to address that? The problem is this quote kind of personifies what we should be doing versus what we are doing. If I had 1 hour to save the world, I'd spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes actually solving it. In the InfoSec world, we do the exact opposite. We go to the halls of RSA, Black Hat, DEF CON, B-Sides, whatever else, tour the vendor areas. We look for whoever's in the top of the Magic Quadrant, whoever got some rave reviews, and we try to buy security. And that security is designed to react to threats that have already happened or that are happening right now. Then, in the end, we plug all these solutions in, we throw all this money and buying the best Chinese appliances. We say, hey, good, we're secure, we're safe. But we're not looking strategically. We're not looking ahead at the problem. We're not looking at the motive that drives these bad guys or these bad actors. We're focusing on reacting to a threat that's already happened or something that's in the past. And then we sit there, beaten and broken when we fall victim to strategic surprise. When you look at the actors and what they're doing, and you can profile and you focus in on the bad guy and not just, the solution that we think fits, is really, really we get in front of this. So that being said, the first thing you learn in Intel school is you can never, ever do a cyber intelligence presentation without the obligatory Sun Tzu quote. It's got to be in every single one of them that you do. And here's mine. Know thyself, know thy enemy, 100 battles, 100 victories. The idea is when you know your adversary in context yourself, and you know yourself in context of your adversary, because you have to have both pieces of information. If you don't have that information, you don't put that all together, you can't stop the threat. You can't understand what the attacks are going to happen that are going to happen to you. You can't build the right wall if you don't factor that in there. So your ability to understand that in action is two pieces: the cognitive realm, the part that goes on inside your head. Do you know what the problem is? Do you really understand what the problem is? Can you communicate that understanding? And the big part that I see most people miss is, do you understand where the gaps are? Because there are always gaps. It doesn't matter if, like I said, I spent time in the financial community, I've spent time in the intelligence community, as much data and as much information as we collected, we always have gaps. Do you know what those gaps are? Then on the action side of it, are you willing to address those gaps? Are you willing to do something about it? Do you have the right tools, the right techniques, the right processes, the right people to address those gaps? And action the information that you do have. You have to have the whole picture to do this effectively. Now, I feel like I should get a promotion for this. I managed to work in 2 Sun Tzu quotes in the same presentation. Every battle is won or lost before it's ever even fought. That's the key. This is a game of logistics. This is a game of planning. You have to have 3 different parts. You have to understand, the strategy that it's going to take to defeat your enemy, or to protect your organization, or to build the defenses around it. Are you equipped? Are you prepared for that battle? Are you willing to execute it? You have to have all 3 pieces of information. Great piece of, great analogy to this: sports match. There's no head coach, basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, football, that doesn't know what they're really good at, what their opponent's really good at. Do they have the tools to win that match? Are they willing to utilize those tools? And do they understand what what their opponent's doing? You don't go to the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup or the World Series or whatever else. The great analogy of that is fist fight. I'll give you a personal story. My brother and I are best friends. I love the guy to death. We had a rough time growing up. We got in fights all the time. So, going into, our various blow-up fist fights, do I have the tools to beat up my brother? I'm bigger than him. Yes, it was lucky. I was very fortunate because I was a lot bigger than he was. Am I willing to take the consequences? Do I understand the strategy it's going to take to beat him? Am I willing to take the consequences for what my parents are going to do to me when we get in a fight and he walks home with a bloody nose? In a lot of cases, yes. But that's one of the reasons I was successful. Cyber war is a whole different world, though. Do you understand what collection priorities China has, what Russia has, what Iran's doing, what North Korea is doing, what all the different nation states, what they're actioning, or what they're collecting against, what their goals are? Same with e-crime. Everybody has a collection requirement. Everybody's collecting data for a reason. Do you understand what that reason is? Do you have the tools to detect it? Are you willing to execute on that? So applying this to cyber intelligence, know yourself, know your enemy. The first piece again is strategic. What's your industry? Where are you in the world? What bucket do you fall in? Everybody has a different threat landscape by their industry, and everybody has an even tighter landscape when you look at your assets and what's out there and what you're trying to protect, where your crown jewels are. When it comes to the adversary, what's their motive and what's their intent? I was kind of alluding to this earlier. We all focus in on the TTPs. We all focus in on let's block hashes, let's block IPs, let's block domains. When you understand the motive and why they're doing what they're doing, and why they're collecting what they're collecting, and why they're breaking in, you can get in front of this. You need to understand their motive and their intent. Everybody collects data for a reason. China trying to collect information because of COVID research and because of the constant, even though the administration has changed, the constant trade war that's going on there. What's their motive? What's their intent? Do you fall in their crosshairs? E-crime. They want money. They want access to your network so they can deploy ransomware, or they want your bank accounts, your routing numbers. They want, systems. The Iranians are famous for this right now. They want to break into systems, especially with Bitcoin mining, and mine cryptocurrency. Understand their motive, understand their intent, understand what they're trying to do, and you get in front of this. From an operational perspective, do you have the right people? Not everybody is good at this job. It would be great if we're all, this utopian society and we're all super smart. We could all do cyber well. It's not the case. There are people good at it, people are not so good at it. Having the right people in place. Then having the right processes came here too. You have to have teams working together. Now, you don't need the budget to have a big, huge fishbowl. We call them cyber fusion centers, but big, huge fishbowls where there's incident response, reverse engineering, and vulnerability management, all the different teams all over the place. Some people don't have the budget for that, but at least have those teams or those individuals that are dual-hatted working together. The vulnerability management team should be, once COVID goes away at some point, hopefully, should be going out to lunch with the threat intelligence team. It should be hanging out with a reverse engineering team. Should be, there should be a process and a workflow that lets them all work together. Technology, I kind of joked about this earlier. having the right tools in place to stop the threat, not generate a whole bunch of alerts that you have to respond to, but actually the right tools so you can build the correct wall is really what's king here. The adversaries, what are their capabilities? Are you falling in the crosshairs of the Russian nation state, or the Chinese nation state, or the North Korean nation state? A lot of us would think that, hey, look, I'm not in the US military and I'm not in South Korea. I don't need to worry about North Korea. That is not true. The big reason that's not true is because when you look at North Korea and their capabilities and their goals, Kim Jong-un recently laid out his 5-year plan, a new update to his 5-year plan. All the areas he's looking to, his country to grow economically and militarily. So do you operate in agriculture? Do you operate in mining? Do you have money at all? Because they're broke. I'm sorry, that's bad. They're broke. They need to fund their regime. So if you have any of those things, that might be something you need to worry about. Infrastructure. What mechanism are they using to deliver malware? What do their C2s look like? What actions are they trying to, what actions are they trying to commit against your system? Understanding that. And then the tactical. What does your footprint look like? This is tough. I'm not saying this isn't, but understanding where your assets are. Understanding physically what your network looks like. What is shadow IT standing up today, this week, this month, this year? I've never been anywhere that had a really, truly accurate network diagram, but having the right processes in place where you can understand where your physical exposure is. Psychological. Let me take a step back for a second. I get asked a lot, hey, Josh, I'm a small organization. I need to budget for my security this year. What should I buy? My first answer is actually a cop-out usually. Training. When your team, everybody from Sally, your reverse engineer, to Jimmy, your admin, and everything in between, do they know what the threat looks like? Do they know what to look for from phishing, from wiring hole attacks? Do they know what to look for when their computer's acting funny? Are they willing to report that? And do they know the right people to report that to? You have to build that in there. And then tactical, the one everybody knows, TTPs. You have to understand what the adversaries are doing, how they're doing it, and how they're perpetrating their attacks and what to look for. So what's the best practice? Strategic, operational, tactical. Like, how do we kind of get in front of this from all three areas? So you have to really look at who consumes it. So background on me for a second. I am a huge racing fan. I used to race motorcycles for years. Everything has a racing analogy. Had too many crashes though, so I don't race anymore. But I did at one point. So this is my analogy to racing. There's 3 different groups. There's tactical, operational, strategic stakeholders. Tactical, I like to define them as your mechanics, so the people who keep the lights on, people who build the SIM, who build the firewall, who maintain the endpoints, who does your antivirus, all your engineering side of the house to make sure this stuff works. Then you have the operational, stars of the show, the race car drivers. Those guys are your threat hunters, your cyber intelligence team, your reverse engineers. These guys make everybody better at their jobs when they work together. When they're able to take information from the tactical side, they can all be better empowered to stop a threat. The next piece, though, is the piece I see a lot of organizations miss out on, and that's strategic. That's your executives, that's your leadership team, your CIO, your CISO, your board, et cetera, and so forth. All the planning, all the direction from InfoSec needs to come from the top down, certainly when it comes to intelligence. If I don't know what I'm trying to protect, I can't protect it, period. If I don't know where our crown jewels are, and I don't know, as much as, willing to share with me what our business is doing, what our objectives are, not just what we've done, but what we're going to do ahead of time, it's hard for me to tell you exactly what the threats can be. It's hard for me to plan for it. Same thing with the whole InfoSec program. So best practices when it comes to strategic, enrich everything. There are a few things that I hated more working in a SOC than getting an alert that said Trojan.generic or malicious or whatever else. Like, what am I supposed to do with that information? You have to have the context it takes to respond to something. Once you have the context and you've enriched that alert, automate it. This stuff can be automated. This doesn't need human time. Plug things into your AV, plug things into your IDS and your firewall, your web proxy, your gateway. your SIM, your tip, your SOAR. This can all be automated. Put the resources in so this can be done by a machine. This doesn't have to be done by an expensive human. A machine can take all this data and take the tactical side and squash that and move on to things that require human critical thought. This doesn't. Have the right enrichment, automate it, and have the context that comes along with those alerts. So from a tactical perspective, what we often do is we focus in on a singular threat. We focus in, hey, ransomware is a big thing right now. We all saw some of the reports from the FBI and CISA that happened back in October this past year. So, and I applaud them for that. I come from the federal government myself, so I understand the time it takes for declassification and getting notifications out and making sure everybody's protected. I applaud them for that. The problem is that focus is on the wrong thing, or that focus is a bit narrow-minded. When you look at the Ryuk ransomware, we track as Wizard Spider, the actor who was responsible for Ryuk ransomware, TrickBot. So when you look at that actor and what they've done, they do things in waves. That month, that quarter time frame, they were targeting healthcare because they're humans. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If I could do something one time, I could do it over and over and over again. And that's what they did. They targeted healthcare. And then they moved on to education. They'll probably move to retail next, maybe financial. Look at the waves. Make sure that you understand the entirety of their threat. The other thing that comes along with this is e-crime is an ecosystem. It's a marketplace. The person that gathers email addresses sells that to somebody who sends spam, who sells that to somebody who pushes downloader. The downloader gets a foothold in the network. It moves laterally. It gets a beachhead. That beachhead is then designed to sell that access to somebody else who has a payload. That payload could be a banking trojan, a credential harvester, a crypto, or of course, in a lot of cases, ransomware. Then that information is then sold to somebody else who monetizes that data. You have to understand e-crime as an ecosystem. You don't have to stop it at the ransomware phase. Stop, or even at the banking trojan phase, or credential harvester, crypto mining. Stop at the delivery phase. Stop at the spam phase. Make sure your employee email addresses aren't there. Stop it before delivery phase. If you can't do it there, stop at the downloader phase. The beachhead in the network. Very, very few and far between do actors own an infection cradle to the grave. Like very few. You don't have to stop the actor at the last phase. Stop whoever got in early. That way you can get in front of this stuff. So having the right IOC feed with the context it takes to respond to things. Are these IOCs coming in timely? Is your malware analysis solution automated? You caught this one piece. You have this one IOC that fired, or there's one piece of malware that got caught or is going through analysis. Pass that into a sandbox or an automated system that can go through and tell you not just the who, what, where, when, why, how. Hey, this is malware. Creates these processes, writes these registry keys, beacons address, that's all important, but can also tell you exactly who that belongs to. Oh, this is Dridex. This is Ryuk. This is Sodanikibi. This is all the different malware tools, so you can build your response more effectively. So when it comes to an operational, there's a couple key areas. Nobody wants to do this. Let's go here, let's go here, let's go over here. You need to have a unified view. We all love a certain amount of tools. In the SOC world, we all have certain tools that we just like and work well with. Make all the tools available in one place to your group and give them the power to do something with that. Make sure that your intelligence team can talk to your vulnerability management team. Not every vulnerability is a problem. I work with a lot of organizations that never feel like anybody does vulnerability management the way I feel like it should be done, but I've never done it myself, so take it for what it's worth. But you don't need to patch every vulnerability. Things like the latest pseudo vulnerability that popped out, or rewind the clock, things like Heartbleed, those need to be patched right here, right now. This is where all our focus needs to be. Academia, vulnerabilities that have never been exploited, we can push that off later. Focus in, make sure intelligence talks to those teams. Make sure your incident response team is talking to your threat hunters. This is who we're targeted with. Your intelligence team is talking to your architecture team. Where is our exposure? Where does this look like? When they all work together and all empowered to do things, you can be proactive. You can engage in threat hunting to find that slightly duller needle in needle factory. I was saying with our Overwatch team. But you have to, all this has to be powered by intelligence. It has to be empowered by working together and taking the whole unified view. So from an operational highlights perspective, again, things happen in waves. It's not limited to just React ransomware. All e-crime actors do things in waves. They realize, hey, let's target manufacturing this week because we have a campaign that works. We'll build it once, we'll deploy it many times. Or we'll buy things from an access broker. This access broker is already inside. When you focus in on their campaign and you profile their campaign, you can extract the TTPs from it. Goes back to the analogy I made earlier, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. E-crime actors, nation state actors, we all do the same thing over and over again if it works. If it worked at this healthcare organization, let's use it at that healthcare organization. This academic institute, same thing. We'll just utilize it over and over and over again. So build your use cases off of that campaign, know what they're doing. CTI, I was alluding to this earlier, make sure they're feeding vulnerability intelligence and vulnerability management so you know what to patch. Make sure you have systems on your network that can tell you what's patched and what's not. All the bad actors need is one hole, one small area. Sally the admin hadn't patched her system. That's all I need is that one, because she opens up all, she is responsible for recruiting. So she opens up every email and every PDF resume that comes in. Make sure that you have a solid vulnerability management, visibility network, and CTI is prioritizing that. The other part is you don't have, threat hunting is, difficult. It's not easy to do. It's easier when you know the vulnerabilities and you know what the actors are doing. But there's certain things you can do from a threat hunting perspective that are, air quote, signature based, but they're more based on behavior. Things like Yara and Snort. Build those in enterprise. Use Yara to monitor endpoints and look for the trends in malware. Crouch dozens of thousands at this point of Yara rules that are super high fidelity that look for the behavior of the malware. It's useless to put high trigger alerts for Yara and Snort. Make sure the fidelity is high and you're able to respond to it effectively. From a strategic perspective, as I said before, this needs to be really a top-down, approach to this. Make sure that threat intelligence and the board, or at least the CISO, know each other. They're on a first name basis. Every now and then, go grab some lunch or something, and that lets your organization focus in on their spending. I was joking about earlier, and I worked in an organization, worked with an organization that I felt that like the CISO would do this. Bam, that's what I want. Walk the halls of RSA, Black Hat, DEF CON, whatever else, and buy whatever was shiny, whatever is on the top of the magic quadrant, whatever was on the new wave, or whatever is on, whatever made the most noise and blink the brightest. That's what they wanted. Focus in on the threat, and that helps you, tailor your spending towards what your threat is. You could build the best wall. You could have the best infrastructure. Great analogy to this was Attila the Hun. Attila the Hun, huge successful conqueror back in 400 AD. Huge problem for the Eastern Roman Empire. The reason he was a huge problem is because he was really good at misdirection. He would take his forces, smaller groups of his forces, and charge the front gate of the fortress, castle, wherever else he was trying to go after. Go after that front gate, the castle, or your network, would focus all their effort on what they thought was Attila's forces. What they thought was the organization they had to withstand. All the meanwhile, he'd take another group of soldiers in a much more logistically difficult position where nobody thought he'd go for an attack, and he'd attack that. You could buy the best firewall. You could buy the best proxy. You could buy all these different solutions, or you could have the best archers, or the best cannons, or the best knights, cavalry, whatever else. If they're not tailored toward your enemy, and you're not spending that effectively on what the solutions are, kind of a waste. And then make sure you're training and you equip people, and you're keeping them up to date on the latest threats. I wish we spent a lot more money on training as a community, because the threats evolve. Why are we not evolving with the threats? Focus in on your training, put money towards training dollars, send your team to SANS, or to pick your favorite training program out there. Not affiliated with SANS in any way. Get your certifications. Make sure you know what those threats are and you're staying up to date on. Work with us, on business decisions. I get it. You can't be involved in M&A decisions, and we can't have visibility on some of that stuff. But we understand what your business is and where it's going. Hey, our organization is thinking about opening up a new office in Shanghai or St. Petersburg or Tehran, when that one doesn't really work. But hey, we're going to open up a new office. What do I need to worry about? What do I need to be prepared with? What will my exposure be? Wrap the whole thing together. Operationalize the threat intelligence lifecycle. Threat intelligence is broken into 4 different parts. Planning and direction needs to come from the top. What do I need to protect? Where are the crown jewels? Where are the golden nuggets we can't lose? Once I have that planning and direction, let's go to collection. Let's start going after the information we need that meets up with the planning and direction. Here's where you start finding gaps, or you should start finding gaps. When you know what you need to collect and you have the resource you need to collect it, what do I not know? What do I not have? Then let's go to analysis phase. We have the data, we have the information that we have available to us. What do I need to worry about? What don't I need to worry about? I do intelligence for a living. I read a lot of intel reports. If I'm an organization manufacturing, I probably don't care at the moment that Iran is continuing to hammer down on Saudi Arabian energy. It probably doesn't matter to me right now. Focus in on what you need to analyze so you can produce the right information. The last piece that we see a lot of organizations fall short on is dissemination of feedback. Make sure the right stakeholders are getting this information. Everybody is a stakeholder. What stakeholders need that information, and am I getting feedback from the organization? I could generate what I thought was the most amazing reports, most amazing slideshows, everything else behind that. If I'm not getting feedback from my organization, and I'm not gathering information, does this help you do your job? Does this help the mission? Are we more secure from that? It's kind of a waste of time. You have to make sure that there's a feedback loop in there. Kind of goes back to the cognitive realm and the active realm. Understand what the direction of the company is, get feedback, but then collection, process, analyze, and produce that information that helps you be more secure. So from programmatic perspective, you have to have 3 things. I was kind of alluding to this earlier, the right people. You have to have the right qualified professionals in place, and the team of stakeholders that gives that feedback loop to be, to more empower your organization. What do I need to worry about this week, this quarter, this month, this year? Or is my SOC team being fed the right alerts? Is the incident response team looking for the right data, or threat hunting team looking for the right data? Do the reverse engineers know what to look for once the system malwares hit the network? Do my executives have information? Do I have the process to help that? Do I have a set in stone organizational model that allows these teams to work together, everything from the top down? If you don't have that right information, that right process in place, you don't have the people in place that can help you, squash this stuff, that can help you, more address this stuff, then it doesn't matter how good your people are. It doesn't matter how good your technology is. You can have great technology, you can have smart people, but if the leadership isn't pushing the process and make sure that information or that process is defined in writing and executed, it's not going to get you in front of this. This is an attackable problem. You can absolutely know yourself and know your enemy and have the whole story together and protect your organization. But you need to make sure you define those processes, you understand the problem, you understand where your gaps are, where you don't have information, and how you plan on addressing that in the future. We all have steps to move up that ever elusive maturity chain, right? We all have next steps to move up the cybersecurity maturity chain. When you have a framework on how you want to move up, not just buy expensive solutions or buy new feeds or buy new data, it'll help you move up and help you be more proactive instead of reactive. So that's a lot of high level information. Short-term, easy to accomplish goals. Have the right technical intelligence. Have the right IOCs. As I said before, timeliness is a thing. Relevance is definitely a thing. Fidelity, also a thing. Context is the biggest part. When you get an alert that says Trojan, not generic or malicious, it's not enough to do something with. I'll spend 48 hours trying to figure out what malicious means, hoping to God it wasn't Emotet, or Emotet's been taken down recently. Hoping to God it wasn't Get and Go loader that's moving laterally all over my network, or the Russian nation state, or the Chinese, or e-crime groups out of Brazil. Making sure, I spent all this time trying to squash that one fly. All the meanwhile, this is continuing to grow as a bigger problem. Then once you have the context, know who that is. Focus on your intel reporting. This is exactly the TTPs that we've seen from React ransomware, from Drivex, from Sodanikibi, from Fancy Bear. Pick your favorite bad actor. Having the TTPs behind what to look for. You can look for hashes, you can look for domains, look for IPs. All those are temporal. All those can be washed away the next day. I was actually doing some research on React before I gave the briefing back in the fall, and as I hit refresh on our IOC feed, bang, looked at new hashes from Wizard Spider, it went up 300 within 5 minutes. If you're playing the static matching game and you're not focused on intel reporting, you'll get behind. Then finally, build threat hunts. Get a threat hunting team that looks for the TTPs. You have the trigger, you have the intel report, feed threat hunting. Make sure that they know what they're hunting for and what you're against your threat landscape. And then finally, a lot of us here work in InfoSec. It's an awesome place to be. It really is. It's a great career field. The problem is not everybody is good at their job. As I said before, not everybody is talented and can solve every problem. Work with organizations like CrowdStrike, and there's other organizations out there as well, to help you get those good qualified people in place, to help you execute the intelligence lifecycle, to build the proactive instead of the pure reactive into your InfoSec program. Because if you're not doing that, you're going to get behind. You have to have the right people in place. So with that being said, that's all I have from a presentation perspective. I'm going to go ahead and leave this up for a second, then check out chat and see if there's anything that popped up.
Thanks so much, Josh. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I do, and also, if you're interested in learning more about Access IT Group, you can feel free to email your questions to rsvp@Access IT Group or contact us via our website. But one of the things, I did have a question for you, Josh. What would you recommend training-wise to learn more about threat intelligence? Because you mentioned training was really important. Is there anything that you could recommend specifically?
Start with open source. Start with blogs, articles, news feeds, things like that. Figure out exactly what the attack landscape looks like. That's a great place to start, but I definitely wouldn't finish there. When it comes to things like media, I'm not going to throw any media sources under the bus because that'd be awful. But make sure you have something to vet that information. If you read, all your various blogs and your tweets and everything else, every vulnerability sounds like we're all going to die. We're not. Not every vulnerability is a big deal. Not every attack's a big deal. Not everything that's going on with the Chinese banging down the walls of Mongolia or the Tibetans or whatever else, that is a problem for you. When you can kind of get started with open source, get started with news feeds and things like that, there, move to organizations that have a more polished intelligence output is your next phase. Whether that's us or several other groups like us that will give you not, hey, look, this is everything going on in the media, but this is what you need to worry about, or hey, this is the attack that we're seeing before the attack is really actioned or materialized. What's going on in the deep dark web? What credentials are being published? You have to have that access and those resources to kind of get in front of this. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. One other question that did come in, I guess, was in terms of threat intelligence. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up right now. If you don't have enough team members to, report on those threats or hunt for those threats, what are your suggestions for that? I guess like services outside of those, but do you have any other suggestions if you just don't have enough team members?
The best thing is, being able to, if you can afford services, that's definitely the realm, because you have, from a CrowdStrike perspective, we have a team that looks for that, slightly duller needle factor, as I was saying earlier, that really outlier, because most AV out there in place, at least I can speak for ours, catches 99.6% of the threats. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Squish everything, right? Block it. The problem is that 0.4% is the one that causes the real pain. And you have to be able to look for the unknown to do that. And it takes a qualified professional that has a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of visibility. So services is definitely going to, if you don't have the people in place and you don't work somewhere. I mean, that's the great part about, I'm from DC, I live in Washington, DC, and it's a great place to be from a threat intelligence perspective, because if you close your eyes and spin around, you'll find somebody who does intel. And Minot, North Dakota, not so much. So getting the resources in from organizations, from services like that, will help you guys kind of squash some of that stuff.
Great. I'm not sure if you're able to talk about this, but we did have a question come in that asked about your take on the SolarWinds breach. Are you able to talk about it or not? I'm not sure.
So because of incident response engagements that we're involved in, I'm not allowed to talk anything about it. Sorry. I would love to, but I can't.
That's okay. Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions we had that came in today, and we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And thank you to the rest of the CrowdStrike team for helping us make this webinar happen.